Good afternoon, folks. We have made it to the last session of the day. Well done. This is elderly care, nursing homes. In the ballroom, we have European hospitals, but none of you want to see that. Just a reminder that after this session at 6 p.m., there is a drinks and networking session downstairs hosted by Siemens Healthineers. But this is elderly care, and it's hosted by James Elliott from HPI. James, you have the floor.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the HPI 2021 Nursing Home Panel. COVID put the nursing home sector in the spotlight in 2020 as infections soared and occupancy fell. Since then, occupancy has recovered somewhat, and the sector continues to attract a lot of investor and M&A interest. We've seen large groups embrace a holistic offering, which includes assisted living and home care, while consolidating the sector across much of Western Europe. But what growth opportunities remain in care homes, and will growing older populations outweigh the steady decline in average length of stay? I'm delighted to welcome an expert panel with decades of experience and a breadth of knowledge in this sector to discuss these fascinating topics. Mark Jensen is the CEO and president of Ambea, one of the top 2 elder care providers in Sweden, Norway and Denmark that is active in care homes, disability care and home care. He was previously CEO and Nordic president of MTR Nordic AB, a transportation company, and has held several senior roles at Carlsberg, including as the CEO of Carlsberg Sweden for 6 years. Mark, it's great to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Charles Pinnell.
Hello.
Is in charge of new businesses and strategic marketing for Korian, a European leader of care present in 7 countries with 3 main business segments: long-term care, healthcare, and care communities. He is the former CEO of Korian France Seniors, where he significantly enlarged Korian's portfolio. Previously, he worked in the tourism industry as managing director of Center Parcs. So I think we should probably address the elephant in the room first. The nursing home sector was greatly affected by COVID in 2020. Occupancy has been recovering for most markets, with the possible exception of Sweden. How has COVID changed the market, and how has the market recovered? Mark, I'll come to you first.
Yeah, thank you so much. Obviously the market in Sweden were very fast and heavily impacted from COVID already in spring last year. And we saw a quite steep decline in occupancy, around 8-10%. Not in the first wave, but including the second wave. At the back end of last year, we bottomed out, so to speak, on the occupancy level, and recovery has started in early spring this year, but we're still not back to where we were before COVID. So around half of the gap is closed now, but it will take time because, of course, you need a net increase, which is quite high to get back to the numbers we had before. That said, the long-term outlook is still the same. So we know from demographics that the need for new beds will increase with at least 30% towards 2030. Obviously this has been a blip, you could say, and of course tough for the organization to manage and to handle. But long term, the outlook is still very positive.
Charles, what's your view on that?
Yes, first of all, I think what I would like to say is everyone has seen during the pandemics that professional staff from nursing home really responded to the call. And for me, it's a very important message because they were very highly committed, and also they invent new ways to working. And to be clear, I think without their huge commitment, the healthcare environment system, I think, would have been much more in trouble. That's the first thing I wanted to say. But meanwhile, we also saw some items of difficulties or items of improvement regarding medicalization in the home care, in the care homes, but also equipments. And I think there is a major thing also to say that COVID-19 has accelerated some existing trends. And these existing trends, for instance, in customer expectation. And we see now that the change of customer expectation have moved very fastly. And there is a need of new forms of housing or services. So for us, it's a main concern. And as Mark said, we also recover the occupancy drop It has been done in Italy, mostly in France and in Belgium, but we have also to provide some new forms of accommodation and services.
So you mentioned there driving existing trends. One of the things we hear a lot about is COVID driving digitalization in healthcare. What, if anything, did COVID change about how you deliver elder care in a care home?
Quite a lot. I mean, we have, of course, done our after analysis to learn from COVID. There are many learnings to capture, which we have done. And one of them is, of course, digitalization and what that can bring both to the staff but also to people living there and to their relatives. Because obviously we have had a long period which has been very tough for everyone. And one of the things that has been especially tough for the relatives has been that they have not been able to visit their near and dear ones because there's been a visit ban imposed by the government for quite a long time. So that led us to, as an example, think of digital ways of meeting your relative in a nursing home, which is not always easy and which was not kind of really widely expanded before the pandemic. It was existing in some places, but not widely expanded. So that's one thing which we have been adding much more attention to. Also in a way that people could come and see our homes without physically going there. Because if you want to move in or you need one of your relatives to move in, we want to understand how's the environment, what's the everyday life, what's the staff like, what would I meet, what can I expect. So we have done a lot of digital content that we didn't really use before because normally people like to go physically and talk to staff and to see and to touch and feel. But when that's not possible, of course, you need to work with other tools to do that. So those things around experience, I would say, has been really developed very fast, both for the people living there, but also for the relatives and also for people that are, planning to move in or have to move in. Also for the staff, I mean, there have been lots of changes because obviously, all meetings have been, turning digital. Also, you talk with the regional manager or you have experience sharing across units or these kinds of things. That would be digital. You would have people staying at home because they are on leave or something else. They would normally go to the nursing home for team meetings and so on. They haven't done that during the pandemic, so the whole meeting experience have been kind of digitalized very fast also. And of course, you also see some elements of the way that you give the care, where we are looking into, both testing some solutions, but also working with spreading solutions that we have already implemented. So I think in lots of ways it has actually changed and also dramatically kind of accelerated the development in the sector.
So you mentioned the way you give the care. What does that actually mean in terms of digitalization changing the way you interact with the patient?
So when you look at the way we have, it's mostly pilots we have done in different ways for people to using cameras as an example to kind of look after people during nighttime, not to interrupt, not to run around too much if it's not needed, to go and look after lots of people when you need to be very careful in terms of potential infection spread and this is a technology which is quite rapidly developing and where we have seen some good results in some of the pilots we have done. Unfortunately, authorities are not as upbeat as we are about the technology, but I think there will be more solutions like that coming our way.
Charles, would you agree with that?
Yes, I'm fully agree with what you said, Mark. For us, it has been also an accelerator in many fields. The first one regarding communication and social links with the family, with their relatives, and the second one maybe toward the staff. I think we heard this morning how much digitalization is a key enabler to give more time to staff for being present near the resident and the patient. So for us, it has been a big booster in providing devices and mobiles for everyone, also to spend more time to the residents. And we had also the chance to have some specific app, one's called Korian Génération. It's a sort of WhatsApp that you can liaise with the family, but also send messages. And for us, it has been a daily communication with all the family. So it has been very important. And I would say also that we learned new jobs, because we began also to be a supply chain manager when we centralized some orders to a PPA, but also we speed up an internal agency to recruit some staff. So it has been also a new way to organize ourselves and to find a closer, I think, a loop to the operation.
Okay. So we hear a lot about vertical integration from care home groups buying up assisted living and home care businesses to cover the whole continuum of care. Is this a realistic area of expansion in all markets? Mark, I'll come to you on that one.
Yeah. So, I mean, the Nordics is a little special on this because you you have a system where your care is paid for by tax money to 100%. There's not really any existing insurance market. There's not really any existing private pay market, which means that you would often have, a step from home care and then to nursing home. And that's quite a big step. And in between, you don't have a lot. You have a very small market with a few operators trying to make something on private basis, and then you have a limited market of kind of municipality-owned housing, which is kind of assisted in a way, but it's mostly kind of relative cheap housing with home care, I would say. So the market is not really existing in the Nordics yet. And we just discussed that before we came on stage here today, that maybe, I mean, over time, as demand will increase, governments would have to look for new solutions to actually finance welfare. And also in the Nordic markets, maybe over time it's not sustainable that we run everything 100% tax paid. So it could be interesting, in the future to look for these solutions, but they're not existing at the moment, and also politically it's a no-go. For the time being.
So is home care feasible for you in the Nordics?
Home care is feasible, absolutely. Home care is feasible, and it's highly competitive market also. You have a mix between government-provided home care and then the private-provided home care, but on government contracts, you could say. So you need to have highly densely populated areas to actually make a business out of it. So in smaller cities and so on, it's almost all on government hands, on municipality hands, and very little private. You have a lot of smaller companies, with family-owned small businesses that can make it work in smaller societies. But for larger operators, it's like the 2-3 largest cities, I would say, in each country that are relevant for providing, quality home care at a level where you can also make business on it.
Okay. Charles, I'll bring you in on that. And could you expand on some of the sort of new models you were talking about COVID driving earlier?
Yeah. Yes, it's slightly different in the country where we are, and we see that, as I said, there is a big need of new forms of accommodation services between nursing homes and home care. And we saw before COVID-19 that we had to deliver some new concept, such as co-living or small living places in which people can have a dedicated services. And now we see also a new way to consume or to live our products. You all know that, but it's not only long stay in care home, it's more and more short stays and more day stays. Just to give you one figures of the French nursing home is roughly 40%, 40, of our entries which are for short stays. And different kind of for short stays. It can be for a respite time for the relatives, it can be for post-rehab short stays. So it brings some new needs if you go back home to have some dedicated services, and after you can go to different kind of area. So that's the reason why we are really a strong believer of having a large scope of solution, accommodation and services within one area. And we see that we are also going from a physical environment to a digital one, because digital at that time become a key enabler to follow. It's not so easy to say, but easy to execute, but a key enabler to follow either the customer journey and the relative journey. So for us, it has been a major improvement the last years, and I will maybe elaborate on the co-living after. But
Mark, do you agree with that? Short stay has been growing in your market?
Not the last 2 years. It hasn't, because I mean you would only go on short stay if you really had the need. Otherwise, you would have had your relatives to look after you. There has really been kind of a resistance to move into nursing homes because it has been because of the development in the first wave, especially. It has been seen as an unsafe environment to be in for many elderly and also their relatives. While I mean you really have to need it massively to take a short stay during this time. We can see it's coming back now, and also I would say that market is kind of the same, because as I just described before, so there's no kind of short stay in the way that you describe it. It's because I mean you have been hospitalized as an example, and you need a step in between the hospital and getting back home, and that could be then a short stay in a nursing home, but it's kind of always that way around. It's not like you go from your home and then to a short stay and then you go back to your home. I mean it can be, but it's often the other way. So again here, I mean it's not like a proportion of the stays that are coming from short stays.
Okay, so you don't see it reaching like the 40% Charles mentioned?
No,
anytime soon?
not at all.
Okay.
No.
So it brings me on to a wider question, which is average length of stay, which has been falling for the past 10 years, and whether or not that fall is fundamentally a challenge to your whole model, and will it change what a care home really is in the future? Charles, do you want to?
Yes, we saw very various changes. If I just maybe underline one change regarding accommodation and the way we can see customer expectation on small living places, we made an acquisition called AGV. I don't know if you know AGV. It's a small player in the east of France, and they joined Korian in 2017, sorry. And at that time, they had some small co-living places around east of France, but they have many demands from local authorities. So we decided to launch a mailing, just saying what is AGV. So it's eight private spaces with common living spaces, and upstairs you have carers who live with their family, so it makes a small intergenerational buildings. And you have 2 buildings of 8, so it means 16 people in the same area, very connected to the environment. And it's mostly for rural places, cities in which you have 500 to 1,000 inhabitants, mostly are 65 plus, and it begins to be a sort of desert of everyone. So local authorities are very keen on having that concept, and we had, after a mailing, I think it was 7,000 people. It was not the best mailing of my life, but we had 1,500 demands just in France to say we need that concept. It's not to say we are the best, but just to highlight the fact that there is a specific demand regarding that concept, because it really fits one major expectation to have small living places close to the home of that people, and also with a quite cheaper price than nursing home. So today we are launching that in France. We have roughly one opening every week, and we will launch, I think, 250 projects in the 2 coming years. But we see also a big demand of care communities like this one, or with a much more medicalized approach in Germany and in different countries also. So for us, it's a quite new segment, and we try to adapt it in different countries. And so far, it's quite interesting to do it.
Mark, where do you stand on sort of falling average length of stay and how it will change the market?
It sounds like a lovely concept,
Yeah.
I must say. But maybe it's also cultural. I don't know, the cold north has a different perspective maybe on these things. But obviously it's changing. I mean, what you're talking about is of course changing our business also, because there will probably be a need for more hospice care. There will be a need for more medical care, more medical competence. There will be a need for higher competence within dementia. There will be a need for higher competence also for within the community of assisting nurses on palliative care. These kinds of things are, of course, within the frame of the system we have today, things that we would, have to work on and make sure that we are ready for that. Again, I mean, there's not really anything in between. You live on your own in your own home, maybe with some home care, and then a nursing home in the Nordic markets, and that segment is to be developed, so to speak. But that requires, that you would unlock some political, hard locks at the moment, and also that you would see probably a higher share of either insurance or private pay get into the marketplace. So for the time being, there's no really kind of discussion or movement in that direction. But one could think of the large generations that were born after the Second World War in the second half of the 40s that will get into nursing home age within the next 10 years or so, whether they would have a different perspective of things than the generations that we have been seeing so far. For sure, they're more wealthy in general, and they have also, during their entire life, been more demanding and have had more ideas themselves than previous generations. So there could be things here changing. Who knows? And of course, we need to be, following that very closely.
You meant, obviously, coming from the Nordics, you'll be familiar with like regulatory risk, given that you were in Norway when they sort of pulled the plug on private operators. Do you see any major future regulatory risks?
There will be some new regulation coming in, I'm sure. In Sweden, as an example, there's a government commission now looking into elderly care and how that has been handled during the pandemic and what should be improved in the system. There was just a new budget proposed by the government today, the budget for next year. They're adding, again this year, additional funds for the municipalities to improve elderly care. They are trying, but I think also there's no real kind of big plan yet, but the commission, the government commission will release its report spring next year, and there will probably be a few things coming out of that. I'm sure there could be more tight regulation in some areas. There could be more demands on proportion of nurses. It could be other things that would come from that. Other than that, I mean, we're used to in the Nordics that you would have a high degree of regulation. And no matter color of government, I mean, it's pretty much the same. I mean, so it's not like there'll be a change in government, Labour-led, Conservative-led, and you will see huge changes. It's pretty much the same. So in this area, there's not a lot of political disagreement, so to speak, in terms of how it should be run.
Okay.
Variances, of course, but not huge disagreement.
Charles, I'll bring you in there with a sort of French Korean perspective. What do you think of regulatory risks post-COVID?
Yes, we see many things, but I think one of the most important things for us is regarding first how we can break silos. Because if we want in one town offering a large scale of solution, and now everything is around one specific regulation. Home care on one side, assisted living, nursing home, and so on. So it's very difficult to bring a real customer journey and a real employee journey. And I think we have to create some real pathways, either for customers but also for employees. And today it's quite very difficult. So we can we can wish that regulation will ease that moves, and is also the way to attract people, because today we see in the regulation we won't have a big law in France, we won't have also a major law in other countries, but there are some baby steps to better attract and retain people. So we can really push to that our works for elderly people become really very attractive ones. I hope we will have a national campaign very soon, and other other action to ease the way to integrate people.
So when you say silos, you mean it's difficult to move staff between your different siloed, so from like home care to care homes, you can't move staff across?
Yes, because you need to have some specific diplomas, and it's not so easy to go from one to another. And just if I can give one example, today we have many problems of finding people, and we have many workers, and we say to the government we can take that people and train them directly. But it was 2 years to have our own training internal agency. So now we can do that, but it's a very, very tough situation to move a global system, despite the fact that we have globally many workers who want to come. But it's still very, very regulated, at least for France.
Do you see that changing, the regulation?
Slowly.
I want to bring up also, I mean, in this context, I think it's important that most people don't understand how it really works. Because you push these decisions and, searching for intelligence in front of you until, one of your relatives really need it. And when you need it yourself, it's too late, right, to find out how it's working because you're just in need. And, somebody needs to provide you with quite a lot of care and you need to move into a nursing home, and that's in itself, a massive step for most people. So, I mean, a way that we need to kind of work also as an industry, I believe, is to, make people more aware of how things are really working. What does regulation mean to you? When you're talking about the customer journey and how, each individual person is looked at, it's not really seamless today. I mean, you would have different government or different public bodies having different interests in terms of pushing costs around, not necessarily looking after the benefit of each and every citizen. And I think these things are important to convey. So as an industry, we also need to make sure that people understand how things are working, because if they do that, maybe they would require from their politicians that certain things should change. And these things are not something we as an industry can drive ourselves. We need to have people with us, so to speak. And if we don't inform, if we don't make people aware of how things are actually working, then we cannot expect politicians to change either. So I think this is a big challenge for us as an industry and something that we need to take seriously. We need to become better in terms of telling the story about how things are working and what can be improved.
How do you actually do that? Like, coming from the Nordics, the press doesn't like you very much, no offence, and neither does the government. How are you going to change the narrative?
Well, I think the press would always, be on private operators, obviously, because there's always this, push towards you would have financial interests in care. And from a Nordic perspective, as for sure all 3 Nordic countries where we operate, and also Finland where we don't operate, you would have this kind of public opinion that if there are financial interests, maybe that would impact the care negatively, the care given negatively, which is not the case, obviously. But that's a perception, of course, we need to work on. And, trying to do that, hiding, I believe is not a good strategy, because then, somebody will just, beat on you when you show up or there is a mistake made somewhere, and then you will hide again. So I think the industry needs to become, a little more offensive in terms of, conveying the positive stories, conveying what is working well, conveying how it is, conveying what could be potentially better, and try also to pilot some of these new models that we're seeing in other markets. Some of them that we hear here could maybe be interesting to try out. Well, maybe sometimes when you do that, somebody will come after you. Maybe someone will not like what you're saying or would think that you should just be quiet and let others speak, but I don't think much will change if you do that. So I think as an industry, we need to not to be so worried about somebody, potentially could, point finger at us or, say we're only doing this for the benefit of money or not for the benefit of people, because that's not true. And I think with a persistent and also continuous communication and marketing of these things, I mean, that would change over time. I'm sure about that.
I mean, I wouldn't want to take on the Nordic press, but
No,
good luck.
someone else has to live with it. Yeah.
So as you both mentioned, staffing is sort of the perennial challenge at the moment if you're trying to operate a care home. How do you retain and attract staff, particularly while we're seeing mandatory vaccination in France and Italy at least, and the rest of the economy recovering post-COVID and offering a other option to workers? That's, whoever wants to jump in on that.
For sure, the staffing issue are key in all countries, but I think it's not a fatality, even though we have to be very clear on the messages we want to provide. But my strong belief is that we can really, as an operator and as a leader, offer new ways to integrate people from inside with specific pathways from one job to another. We discussed that before regarding silos, but also people from external profession. We see that you can have some people who want to join us, so we can also train them. And after, we have to deliver what we do now, some specific and personalized pathway to enlarge training and possibility to have some new positions. So it's very important, and for us, we've made the In Caring Hands program as Korian. It's a sort of reciprocity of attention between customers and employees to say we really have to match both and not only one, because it's otherwise the most important is really to have also people to care people. So it's a real corporate project.
So if there's one thing I believe has been good with the pandemic, you can't find many, but one thing I believe has been good is that all the fantastic job which is done by our staff on a daily basis has been done for many years like that, has been put much more in the spotlight. And I think also the public acknowledgement of the importance of that work is much higher now than it was before the pandemic, which could hopefully lead to the jobs in the care sector to be more attractive and be perceived more attractive. So that's one thing that we really need to continue pushing and growing and nursing, that the attractiveness of the sector and the attractiveness of the jobs in the sector needs to be, at that high level where we have seen it, now get to, because the spotlight has been on the sector. So that's one thing. Another thing is that we need to broaden the base simply of recruitment. There's quite a lot of people outside the workforce today that could definitely be used. I think we need to work closer with schools to make sure that the students that get out have the proper and right education for the need. We might need to invest more in primary education ourselves for assisting nurses, as an example. We need to work more with the workforce that are not native Swedish, Danish, Norwegian speaking, to make sure that they get the language competence needed actually to take jobs in our sector. We have quite a few of them which are unemployed today and could definitely take a job in our sector with better language competence. Can we partner with authorities to deliver that? And then I also think it's often like we talk about all the young people that are in the 20s and mid-20s, and we want them to get into the sector. But as we are living longer, I mean, it's also like we might need to work until we're 75. And that would mean that you probably could need a change in profession, midlife, maybe when you're 50. And why not the care sector? So maybe there's also a need for what we could maybe call middle-aged people, like me, not you, because you're younger, but like me, to kind of change and then work 15 years in the care sector, not from your 25 until you're 40, but maybe from your 50 until you're 65 or 70. So I think there could also be some opportunities there that we need to look into, that people that need to retrain because their profession is maybe not relevant anymore, because things are changing, society is changing, jobs are changing. Why not in the care sector? I believe that could be very good for the sector overall, and maybe that could be something for us to push also.
I think if we took a poll of this room, we wouldn't find many takers of the option.
I'm not so sure.
Who here is over 40? Would you say 40 or 50?
50.
Who here is over 50 and would be willing to transfer into a career in care?
Come on.
Yeah,
one man.
Down there, two. Yeah,
Two.
Yeah. That's a good start.
It's a good start.
Yeah.
Maybe that's
The rest already in the sector,
But James, I think there is also an issue regarding education and the way that we can, the sooner as we can, speak about what we are doing, about our jobs, the way to educate some new and future professionals and also managers, because I think we have also an issue today to build a new generation of strong managers to come and to work, and we see in different business schools some specific learning session and some thematics regarding our own work. So I think it's very important to say that it's appealing, it's very useful, everybody knows that, but you can learn it very soon and have a complete path in our companies. But there is a strong, I think, belief that it's a social way of thinking, the way that we want to push our elderly and educate also population.
Interesting. I think we should put it open to questions from the floor now. I can't see any questions online. Does anyone have a question? Yes, you sir. Yeah, at the front.
The question is about that customer experience. How do you, customer experience in this sector, how do you guys measure it? Do you use NPS? And if yes, what is the reference for you?
What is NPS?
Yes, Net Promoter Score.
Yeah.
Yes, so we use it.
Yes, we use it.
No, NPS is a key measure, and at least for us, it has been implemented in all our activities, but we can measure it in clinics at every stay. In home care, it has been set up for every month, and after that, it's not only just a measure, but also one meeting with the relative and all the people to say how it works. And globally speaking, for nursing homes, we have two waves regarding residents and relatives. And it's really an amazing tool, first to monitor what is going well and not, but also to communicate and to debate and to have the most transparency that we can. So, but I don't have precisely benchmark on the market. It's quite new. I come from the leisure industry and tourism, and it is for sure the main focus. And meanwhile, we have another focus, as everyone I say, but regarding ratings on e-reputation, Google ratings, and so on. So it's also, for me, one of the key things to monitor in order to have the good level of feedbacks.
Ambassadorship is really important for us, so both in terms of staff ambassadorship and also ambassadorship from relatives. So word of mouth is really important for getting new placements. So if you're not working with continuously surveys on how people are thinking of you, and also that you're having a proper measure in your Net Promoter Score, then you're missing something out. So we are using that also.
Interesting. I think I see another question just at the back there.
Hi. So over the summer, there has been a big investment of a large VC fund in the home care space in the US, who promised to digitalize the home care space and basically create an ecosystem where people are going to be treated at home with sensors, telehealth, telecare, whatever you can imagine. So how do you see the future of your industry in the long term, residential versus home care?
It's an interesting question. How do you see the future?
As far as I'm concerned, we see that nursing home will polarize more and more on medicalization and specialization, because we see the residents that we have right now is no longer at all the residents we had 10 years ago. We all know that, but so we see that. And meanwhile, we see a new generation of elderly people with new expectation, with quite unmet today offers, more tailor-made solution and personalized offers. So we see that is a large range of new solution, but not solution by their own. What we see in Korian, there are some different kind of concepts that are growing up. For instance, in Belgium, we have a combination of assisted living and nursing home with shared services. For instance, in Germany, it's more care communities within assisted living. So it's linked, but it depends also of the regulation and of the habits of the people. But clearly, it becomes a physical to a phygital. That's quite a way to say that we will have some places to have care, to have services, but a continuum of care through digital and through ability to have one single point of contact. That will be a main change for everyone, but it has been brought with data infrastructure and CRM and so on. So it's a shift towards an ecosystem of solution.
Mark, what was your view?
My view is that I'm sure it will come, but in the Nordics, regulators are very conservative on this, and I would not say there's a resistance towards new technology, but it's almost like that, not from the people that would have to use it or have it in their homes, that could help them for a better everyday life, but for regulators that simply are not open to many of these solutions today. And there's no real incentive for anybody to drive this as long as regulators are as conservative as they are. So I really hope this is something that will change, and will change relatively soon, as we see some really interesting technical and digital solutions coming up in other places, and it could improve people's lives. So over time, yes, for sure, but right now, not much.
Okay. Any other questions? Come on. It's a fascinating panel. Great opinions. I'd love to ask a question. I have asked a lot of questions, actually.
Maybe just one question. You mentioned a lot, you gave also quite interesting example from the French market on smaller units, and you also mentioned that demand is getting more specific in dementia or more medicalized, etc. At the same time, a lot of shift into home care and in sort of patient or customer preferences. Do you have any concerns on sort of the existing infrastructure running out of purpose? Sort of the classical, I know, coming from the German market, we have the 100, 150 bed units with sort of increasing turnover of patients in them. And it doesn't feel anymore like being the most sexy space, but indeed the more specialized concepts around it, which seem to have more preferences.
So that was about care homes
No,
basically
but
made obsolete.
to maybe have an answer for me, it remains the core. and to be clear also regarding pandemics, the care home, nursing homes is really a solution and not a problem. And we have to build around that, for sure. But we see that it has to be opened also to new kind of stay, new kind of links also with home care. So it's more a transformation and a very significant transformation, but from a core asset of expertise, of location in which you can provide services and so on. But for me, it's more a question of transformation than skipping one solution.
Mark?
Yeah, maybe somebody will tell me in 10 years I was wrong, but I would say for now we are not so worried about that because there is still a very high demand for new nursing home beds, and we from the demographics we can see even though the average length of stay is coming down, people are getting older and so on, then there's still a high need for this. We are building, I would say, not the very big units today, like the 150 bed units that you described, that were maybe more a unit of the past. We don't have such units anymore, and we build them smaller, but still you can also build a 60 bed home or 70 bed home, so it feels quite cozy, depending on how you build it, what you have, what surroundings you put around, what does the garden look like, terraces and these kinds of things. So it doesn't look like a hospital just with 50 beds down the row. So I think we have become much better at this, and probably that will improve over time. but I don't think there is a risk that the current stock will become, obsolete, so to speak.
Interesting. Any other questions? Now's your chance. You've got 5 minutes. One of you will break before I do. Probably not. Wait, no, I have a question then. Mandatory wait, who had a question?
I have one.
Excellent.
So I got a little bit stuck on the idea of incentives. Sorry. Yeah, so I got a little bit stuck on the idea of incentives, whether actually the industry has the right incentives. So what should they be? In France, for example, or I'm from Nordics as well, so I can guess. But what is a right incentive to develop a proper elderly care market?
Does it look at government incentives and the payer incentive?
For a new care home care, just because today in France you don't have anymore some authorization, and I'm not sure that we will have some authorization in the few years. I don't know, but there is a clear shift to say, okay, we want to push private home to equip them with a good level of digitalization of equipment. That's really the first main concern. And the second one is dealing with new kind of inclusive buildings. So they push a lot of their regulation to ease that kind of. That's the reason why we are shifting on that. Regarding care homes, today the main concern in France, at least, will be how we can modernize a quite old portfolio, because more in public area, private players are around 28%, but 50% are public. And in public area, I think the average old of that nursing home is more than 35 years. So it's a big issue to say how we can finance that, how can we transform them to the new customer needs and the needs to medicalization, and how we can find some agreements with private operators to ease that.
Maybe I was a little bit unclear. I guess one way of thinking about this is, what's the right way of measuring what is a high quality elderly care? Because that essentially should be the incentive against which we all work. And are there measures in France, for example, that you could actually say every single provider is striving after a certain amount of quality measures?
Yes, that's okay. That's a very key question. I don't know if you were this morning at the panel regarding big platforms, and Sophie Boissard, the CEO of Korian, said that we are now on a way to have a certification, a very formal certification, ISO 9001, but dealing with what you're saying. What are the good standards, the level of processes, and how you monitor that? So it's dealing with all the customer journey, but every kind of topics to do that. So on one side, for us at least, standardization and certification is key to ensure that whatever the situation and wherever we are, you have the good level of services. And to give to the customer, to the residents, to the relative, way to express their good things, but also bad things, and the way that you can manage unsatisfaction, because it's really regarding that. So for us, it's a two big polarity.
So jump in there, Mark. What do you think?
Yeah, I would say that if you look to the Nordic countries, I mean, the biggest thing that could be done would be opening up the market. You still have a little less than 20% that are on private hands, and if you really want, incentives for driving quality, I mean, you need to have a free and open market. You need to give people freedom of choice. I mean, in Norway, as an example, it's very difficult to get into the home that you want. In most municipalities in Sweden, you don't have a choice. The municipality will tell you where to stay. In your municipality, you cannot even pick the home you want among the municipality-owned homes, and there are no private homes. I mean, that is not driving a lot of quality necessarily. So I think more positive competition and opening up of the market would definitely improve the quality of care. Then other things could be put on top, for sure, but that would be a good start.
Great, I think we're nearly out of time, so I'd just like to thank our panelists, Mark and Charles. It's been great to talk to you, and I thank you all for joining us today, and can we give our panelists a round of applause, please?